Republican Congresswoman Mimi Walters begins her day at her office in Washington, D.C. It's Walters' 255th day as a member of Congress, representing the 45th District of California.
I grew up in Laguna Niguel and had a wonderful childhood. I'm number 5 out of 6 kids and came from a very large family. We spent a lot of time at the beach, a lot of great memories of growing up in Southern California, and it will always be my home.
After graduating from Dana Hills High School, Mimi attended UCLA, where she received a degree in political science. Mimi would eventually come back to Laguna Niguel to start her family and begin her political career.
When my husband and I got married, we decided to raise our children in Laguna Niguel. And I always wanted to be a part of the community, having had experience at Dana Hills High School and in college, being involved. I felt like I wanted to give back to the community as much as I could. So I remember I had just had my first child. I was still working full time, but in my spare time, I got involved in the holiday parade. And that's really sort of how I got my start, getting to know people in Laguna Niguel again. And it was from that experience that I decided in 1996, when I was pregnant with my 4th child, that I wanted to run for city council. And it was a wonderful experience. I lost the first time that I ran, but I ended up getting appointed and serving 8 years on the city council. But it really has been wanting to be a part of the community, wanting to make sure that Laguna Niguel stayed as a wonderful place as I remembered as a child growing up, and being a part of it. And that's really why I decided to run for city council.
During Mimi's time as a councilwoman and mayor of Laguna Niguel, she was heavily involved with defeating the proposed airport to be built at the former El Toro Marine Base.
Measure F says you can no longer spend money to promote an airport, so that's been a positive win for us. We still have to battle in the courts and continue to defeat it, but I'd like to just comment on what this issue has done for Orange County itself. Although it's been a very controversial issue, as we all are aware, it's been a very positive issue for South Orange County in the respect that a lot of us are newer cities and we haven't been politically active. And this issue has really brought a lot of people into the political process that normally wouldn't have gotten into the process. And that's been very positive for us. So we're going to continue fighting.
With all of the challenges of running a city and defeating an airport, it was one of a more personal nature that stands out in retrospect.
I think the biggest challenge was I ran at a time when my children were very, very young, and trying to balance being home with the kids and attending meetings, attending ribbon cuttings, attending city council meetings, balancing wanting to be home with the children, but also wanting to participate in the community. And trying to learn that balance was probably the biggest challenge for me.
After 8 years with the city of Laguna Niguel, Mimi set her sights on a seat in the California Assembly.
Hi, I'm Mimi Walters. I'm a business owner, former investment executive, a Laguna Niguel City Councilwoman, a wife and a mother. I'm running for the State Assembly to turn our state around.
Walters was elected to the Assembly, and in 2012 to the State Senate. But as a member of the minority Republican Party, making headway on issues important to her and her constituents was an arduous task.
I was only given the language 1 hour ago before this committee hearing, and I don't know what's in these bills. I only have an understanding what the plan could be. In the California State Senate, being a member of the minority party, it was very difficult to ever get meaningful legislation passed, because what would happen is our legislation would get killed in committee. And what people don't really understand, when you're in the majority party, it is your policies being put forward, not the minority party's policies. It's the majority policies being put forward. So if a member of a majority party puts a policy forward, it's probably going to get passed through committee and then to the floor. Well, being a member of the minority party in the California state legislature, my policies rarely ever got to the floor. But I did assist in helping with pension reform when Governor Brown a few years ago wanted to have pension reform.
We've got to fix the pension system, along with a lot of the other things we're doing. And I would have to say, of all the votes you're going to have to take in the next 6 months, This is not going to be the hardest. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
First of all, Governor, I applaud you on bringing forward your 12-point plan. I think it's a very good first step in addressing this pension crisis we're facing. One of my concerns is, and this has been talked about earlier, is the fact that we're not addressing our unfunded pension liability. That is obviously a major problem that we have. And I just want your thoughts on why your plan doesn't address it. The governor did not take all my ideas, but he took some of them. And that was probably one of the most meaningful pieces of legislation that passed in California that I participated in.
On June 27, 2013, incumbent Republican Congressman John Campbell of the 45th District of California announced that he would not seek re-election at the end of his term in 2014. Less than 1 month later, Mimi had decided and announced that she would run for the seat in the 45th District. On January 7, 2015, newly elected Speaker of the House John Boehner gave the oath of office to the 114th Congress.
According to precedent, the chair will swear in the members-elect en masse. So the members, if all members will please rise, the chair will now administer the oath of office. All members will raise their right hands. Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you would take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you are about to enter, so help you God? Congratulations. You're now members of the 114th Congress.
I think one of the most proud moments that I have had was when I was sworn into office just recently as a member of Congress. My family came to Washington, D.C., and we had a celebration the night before we got sworn in. And then to put my hand up and swear on the Bible in front of my family and friends was absolutely one of the most breathtaking moments that I've had.
With the ceremony complete, it was time to get down to work.
I'm very proud to say that I was a very big part of the Trade Promotion Authority legislation that passed through Congress recently. And basically what Trade Promotion Authority is, or people have referred to it as TPA, has been given the president a framework of which he can use with Congress's approval to negotiate trade with other countries.
At this time, I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from California, Ms. Walters.
Gentlelady from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise in support of Trade Promotion Authority, or TPA, and I'd like to thank Paul Ryan for his leadership on this issue. TPA is not to be confused with TPP, would put Congress in the driver's seat when it comes to negotiating trade agreements. It would ensure that the president is held accountable to Congress and the American people in negotiating all trade deals.
You know, 1 in 5 jobs in America is because of free trade. And it's a very important component of our business community. So I was very involved in helping pass that legislation, which was a bit controversial. So I'm very proud of that piece of legislation.
As a freshman congresswoman, Mimi is working to build a foundation for her time in the House.
Politics is a part of policy. You can't have policy without politics. That's just the way it happens. It goes hand in hand. And I think the best way to get the best policy is to listen to both sides and come to an agreement. And one of those ways that we can achieve that is through personal relationships. And although I've been in Congress for just a short period of time, I'm trying to develop relationships with members of the Democrat Party because I know that at some point we're going to be working closely together, and I want to be able to develop relationships with the other side of the aisle. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm always going to support what they have to say or they're going to support what I have to say, but there will be times where there's critical legislation coming before us that will require having that personal relationship in order to be able to get something accomplished. And I think many, many years ago, from what I understand, a lot of policy and a lot of really good policy passed through Congress based on just relationships. And I think that's really an important part of being an effective leader.
From an outside perspective, it appears that all of the partisan wrangling leaves little time to accomplish anything.
People think that we aren't doing anything in Washington, D.C. and Congress because the press, unfortunately, likes to play on the issues that the Republicans and the Democrats don't agree on. We actually have been extremely busy in the first several months that I've been a freshman. We've passed over 190 pieces of legislation, passed over to the Senate. Now, the Republicans control the majority in the U.S. House of Representatives, and we control a majority in the Senate. But in order to pass a piece of legislation in the Senate, it takes 60 votes, and Republicans have 54. So you still rely on 6 Democrats to pass legislation. Therefore, it's a little bit more difficult to pass legislation out of the Senate. Having said that, we've passed 32 pieces of legislation out of both houses that have gotten to the president's desk, and the president has signed 29 pieces of legislation into law currently. So we are working on a bipartisan basis, but you're not seeing that necessarily because the media might not be portraying that we are, but we actually are.
Mimi's current focus is on a piece of legislation known as the Skills Visa Act.
That legislation is going to be introduced in September when we get back by Congressman Darrell Issa. And what the Skills Act is going to do is it's going to increase the amount of visas that we give to people who are in foreign countries that come to America to study or to start businesses. We have a need right now, our businesses have a need to hire a lot of these people who are being educated in science, technology, engineering, and math, which they call STEM. And what's happening is people are coming to our country, being educated, and then their visas are expiring, so they're going back to their country using all the knowledge that they've learned and starting companies overseas. We would like some of them to stay here to help our businesses. And the idea behind not only reforming our visa program, but taking that money that we will generate, which right now the Congressional Business Office is saying that we will generate $110 billion in 10 years and an additional $400 billion in the next 10 years. So over a 20-year period, we will generate about $500 billion in revenue. Take that money, use that money to get a permanent fix to our highways and our roads through the Highway Trust Fund. So one of the biggest pieces of legislation I'm working on is the visa reform, because that goes through the Judiciary Committee, which I sit on, and then the Highway Trust Fund, getting funding for that, I sit on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. So I've been asked to help make sure we can put these pieces of legislation together and find a permanent fix for Highway Trust Fund.
Along with national issues, Congresswoman Walters continues to fight for matters affecting California.
Mr. Speaker, this year marks California's 4th consecutive year of the drought. In California alone, over 37 million people are impacted by the drought. The economic cost of the drought is expected to be nearly $3 billion, and almost 19,000 agricultural-related jobs will be lost as a result. Our current drought is not a result of lack of rain. It is the result of failed policies that have mismanaged critical water resources throughout the West. My colleagues and I in the House come before you today with a solution, the Western Water and American Food Security Act of 2015. This vital bill will modernize our water infrastructure into the 21st century and ensure that California is well equipped to handle future drought crisis. I urge my colleagues to support this bill and stand with me as we work to provide Californians with the water resources they need. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Well, the biggest issue we're facing right now, obviously, is the drought. we just don't have enough water because we haven't had enough rain. And it's not just because we haven't had enough rain, but we haven't had enough storage. The policies that have been put in place over the years haven't allowed us to capture that rain in California when we've needed to capture it. And so the drought, I think, is the biggest single issue we're facing. In addition, we have a lot of people that are coming out of college now still aren't being able to find jobs, and trying to create an opportunity for people to get jobs in California is still another very big issue.
With so much to accomplish, Mimi Walters has literally hit the ground running in Washington, D.C.
One of the biggest surprises is the amount of walking you have to do. Now, I'm somebody who had a pretty good basic foundation when it came to understanding how policy works and how a piece of legislation becomes law. So I had a really good foundation, having served 10 years in the California State Legislature. But what I wasn't prepared for is how much I have to walk in Washington, D.C., because my office is in the Cannon Building, and to get over to the floor is quite a walk. And then I serve on the House Judiciary Committee and Transportation and Infrastructure, and both of those committees meet in Rayburn office building, which is the furthest way from my office that you can possibly imagine. So I'm somebody who loves to wear high-heeled shoes. I now have to change my wardrobe and wear flat shoes.
Since her election to Congress, Mimi Walters has been learning to make adjustments to Washington life.
At the local level, you're really hands-on on decision-making issues. And I remember just going to the local grocery store, you know, people would recognize you when you're in the grocery store because they may have attended a city council meeting, or you may have gone to one of their community events or had a meeting with them, whatever it might have been. But you're more recognized, I think, in your community at the local level. Then serving at the state level, I traveled a lot. I would leave Monday mornings and I would travel to Sacramento, and I would come back on Thursday evenings, so you weren't quite home as much. You dealt with issues that dealt with on a state level versus just your local community for the most part. And now going to Washington, D.C., we're dealing with really, really big complex issues, and I'm even limited at my time being home, unfortunately, because it requires me to be in Washington, D.C. During the whole week, and I'm usually only home for, you know, a couple days at a time. We do get weeks off when I'll be home, but for the most part, I'm living in Washington, D.C., and that's been a big challenge for me as well. I miss that community spirit, being home so much.
While the obligation carries some sacrifice, Mimi is ready for the challenge ahead.
I want to be able to be a part of moving America forward. As I mentioned, my kids, my husband and I have 4 children, and I love this country. And just being a part of history, having my voice heard, representing the people of Orange County is a great honor. And I am so humbled that I have this opportunity because I care so much about America, and I want to be part of that decision moving us forward.
The position consumes most of her time in Washington, but Mimi does have some plans for her free time in the nation's capital.
Well, I loved American history, one of my favorite classes, and I love going back to Washington, D.C. and seeing all of the history we have. One of my goals while I'm there is to stay for a weekend and go do a lot of the touristy things. I want to go to Mount Vernon. I want to tour the Smithsonian Institute, so I can really feel a part of American history.
While American history takes place all around her in Washington, D.C., Mimi Walters is very much aware of her personal history that has landed her in this position of accountability.
I look at the way I got to Congress as sort of somebody who worked their way up from the mailroom. I started at the local level, working on the holiday parade. I was a member of a committee in Laguna Niguel. When I decided to run for city council, people said to me, oh, you're never gonna win, you have small kids, you can't do this, and I just did it anyway. When I ran for state assembly, people told me I couldn't win because I was running against the chairman of the Board of Supervisors. There was no way you're gonna win, you're just a stay-at-home mom, a little city council member. I said, yes, I can win, and I did. And by the time I got to the state senate, people took me very seriously, and I didn't have any really serious competition when I ran for the state senate. And then finally running for Congress, because I had been in office for 18 years and I had established myself, I knew I could win Congress. And the competition, some people who were going to run decided not to run against me. But it took many, many years of me having to prove myself. And I did. And 18 years might seem like a long time, but for me, it's been totally worth it. And I am so appreciative of this job I have now, because it's difficult to win congressional races. We don't have term limits in Congress, and people often keep them as lifetime jobs. So these are tough seats to win, but I am truly, truly grateful for it.
But all of the responsibility for our American democracy does not fall solely on the shoulders of the elected.
I think it's really important for your audience to participate in the government process, to participate in their community, to have their voices heard. For me, that is how I got my start, was participating in my community. And I try to teach my children that they need to be involved and they need to vote, because every vote does count. And we are the greatest country in the world, and we are the most free country. And we can't take our freedoms for granted. And many people wish they could be in America, and we should be very thankful we are.
While thankful for her newly elected position with Congress, Walters is keeping her options open for other opportunities that may arise in the future.
I'm going to continue working in Congress right now, but I always say to my kids, the sky's the limit. And if there's an opportunity that presents itself to me, I'll go for it.
And her advice for young girls with aspirations for a career in politics?
I would tell a little girl, if you want to be a member of Congress, work very hard, study very hard, set goals for yourself, and be careful what you do, because with social media, everything will come back to haunt you if you don't behave. I think that women can have it all. We often are told you can't have it all. If you want a career and you want a family, you can't have both. And I say, yes, you can. And I'm living proof of somebody who's been able to do it all. And it's not necessarily a person would be able to do it all at once, but you can have it all. I have a very supportive husband, and we work together very well as a team. So it wasn't me just doing it by myself, but it was a goal that he and I had both set out for, and I just say, go for it.